Hello, everybody. Well, that's loud. Is that too loud? A little bit too loud. Perhaps I'll turn it down. Thank you for staying behind, all of you. If I'm honest, I cannot believe you are staying behind. If this was in England, at this point, everyone would be in the pub. And probably drunk, actually, as well. But you're probably, well, hopefully you're like me. You're interested in games. I'm very interested in games. I've been playing them for pretty much all of my life, because when I wasn't playing games, I was bored. And how I would talk about that now is not being bored. I would talk about it that I'd say that the world is suboptimal. It's not optimized for day-to-day life. What I mean by that is that going shopping, doing your tax return, filling in forms, going to work is not enjoyable. Anyone disagree with me? So, and if outside of work is not enjoyable, work often can sometimes not be enjoyable, can be very boring for some people. When I first started working, my job was administrative and boring, and I was not engaged, and I was not contributing much to the company. Right now, how many people, what percentage of the workforce do you think are unengaged? Have a guess in your head. How about this? Almost 90%, 9 out of 10 people, according to the research firm Gallup, are not engaged in their jobs. They're disconnected. They come to work each day and they leave who they really are behind, and they become this kind of machine, this automation person. And it means the companies aren't getting the true value that they can get. Their spontaneous decision-making is not very good because they don't have all of their intuitive function available, because they're not 100% who they are. They've left part of themselves at home. How much money do you think this costs the world, the global economy? $2 trillion annually. It's a phenomenal issue. But we don't see this issue because we sort of feel grateful on some level. Because we've still got family members that tell us about how hard it used to be. In the late 19th century, there were people working in terrible conditions, in workhouses that were intolerable compared to what we live with today. Pollution and control, having to check in and check out. I mean, people were treated like machines. So by comparison to that, we feel grateful. But should we feel grateful? We know how dangerous stress is and the physical issues that stress causes. If we viewed our jobs, we viewed the working world through the lens of someone 50 years in the future, we might take a different view. They might look at what we have to do and think it's really, really awful, stressful and boring, is beyond what they can even comprehend based on the lives that they lead. So how will the world be in the future? These are three sort of changes, if you like, between these two eras that could be indicators to us as to how things, the trajectory on how things are changing. The three themes in terms of the difference between then and now. It's become less physical and a bit more virtual. Machines are taking away the physical work. People in companies are typically or generally more accepting of your outside work selves and your outside work needs. And which is sort of the payoff, which is the sort of the payback. You're expected to be always connected. Your phones, your smartphones means you're always working, even weekends and on holiday. So if we use those three themes and project forward into the future, you can imagine a world of work where when you join the company, it's effectively a virtual space you plug into. There isn't necessarily a physical place that's of any importance. And from anywhere you engage, and you engage in intellectual creation. Now, if you try to imagine that world, what that might feel like for your jobs or for the jobs of people that are in your family, how far away is that? Is that another 100 years away? Definitely isn't. Because one of the driving forces of change is technology. And technology doesn't change linearly. It changes exponentially. So in a sense, the world of work is going to change very dramatically over the next 10, 20, 30 years. It will probably be as different 20 years from now as it was 100 years ago. And that will affect the way that we work and the way our lives operate. If you look at the lives that we've led over the last 100 years, on the left-hand side, these are the names that are given to people that are born in different eras. So the greatest generation were people that were born 100 years ago. Silent generation, 90, 80 years ago. The baby boomers, they're the people that are around us now, our parents, 70-year-olds. Generation X, that's sort of, the 50s. And then Gen Ys are the 40s, the Gen Ys about 30, and or early, late 20s, and Gen Zs are in the teens. And the pace of change between those generations is growing at an exponential rate. There's never been a time in history when the difference between the middle age and the youth is as dramatic as it is today. The things that they do now, they're social natives. They've only known social. They disclose without worrying. They don't worry about privacy. They have a virtual world in their social networks. All of them do. And they think we're odd for owning music on even just owning music on your device. They want to stream it. Someone the other day wondered why I had a watch. Why do I need a device for telling the time when it can be done in one device that does everything? So it's a very different generation for us. The difference that we've seen so far is going to get even more dramatic. These two major epochs are on the horizon that you probably know a bit about. The first one is artificial intelligence. So Google, which have bought up 30% of all the artificial intelligence firms on the planet right now, being led by Ray Kurzweil, who was considered by Time magazine to be the natural heir to Edison. He's leading an effort to make the whole internet information of the world hierarchically organized. What does that mean? It means the internet will wake up and become intelligence that you can just talk to. He thinks that will happen by 2029. So that's the strong AI, it's called, and that's going to happen in our lifetimes in the next 15 years. And we will experience that most through virtual personal assistants that we'll engage with and will do stuff for us. The epoch following that is the nanotech epoch, and this is about manufacturing elementary particles that can be any substance you like. This is not 3D printing. This is producing diamonds, plastics, anything. And each of these particles can have internet information in them, so you can literally just create something out of air. This is what the nanotech revolution is promising. These two scenarios take stuff away from us on a day-to-day basis. Effort and things we have to do just get taken away from us. So it frees us up. Great. What are we going to do with ourselves? Well, we'll probably spend more time in virtual worlds. This heavy-looking device bought by Facebook for 20 billion is going to probably be considered to be the ancestor of the devices that we use 15 years from now. It will become something that we'll put in our eyes, and it will just connect us to completely different worlds that we'll connect into. So in this virtual world, this future where we live in this virtual world, because everything around us is optimized and we're freed up, there are some big questions for what we do for a job. Well, how do we spend our waking lives? What will it mean to work in this new era? What will it take to recruit people that are in this space and they're in this virtual area? How do we get them to come and join us? And how do we get them to be motivated? There are some clues to how we're going to do this because, and I love this quote, the future is already here right now in this room. It's just not evenly distributed yet. And I just think that's really, really nice because we can start to peer into the world now and look for clues and signals for how we're going to, motivate this future workforce. Now, if you take that younger generation, that Gen Y generation, the guys that are in their 20s or 30s right now, it's really interesting. I get in conversations with people where they say that these 20-year-olds aren't committed. In my day, they say, we would focus on our jobs and stay in the company for many years and commit. These guys, they just stay for a year and a half and they leave. Why shouldn't they? In a sense, these guys have a more authentic driver. They're not motivated to just bed down and waste their lives in a company doing something that they don't necessarily want for some sort of artificial promotion just so they can amass money for a sense of security. These guys want to do something that has more meaning because they've grown up in families that have had, most of the families, a lot of the families would have had available credit, a lot of them would have had financial security, they would have seen increasing wealth, and they would have seen prices for all products dropping. So their needs, their security needs, have been more than satisfied. So it frees them up to move up a level. If you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you can see very, very clearly that probably a lot of us in the room are in this red area about, we've moved up to sort of like self-esteem, confidence. They're the motivations, because the other issues have been satisfied. But that Gen Y, potentially, some of them are starting to look for more than that. You won't be able to motivate them with just that. I've got a really, really, really good example. So there's a guy that works with me who's brilliant. One of the best hires I've ever made. I really worried that I wasn't going to be able to pull him out of his existing company. He joined us, not for much more money, and not for any big title. When he joined, I said to him, "Why did you join?" He said, "Just before you called." He said, "My boss was at an annual global board meeting, and she called me up. She was panicking. She said, 'I need a vision for our company. What's our company's vision? Can you write something for me really quickly that I can present tomorrow?'" He put the phone down, and he was shattered. He thought this company had a vision, had a purpose. It's just manufactured. He felt so unled by his boss, and he didn't want to spend his life working in a company like that. So he left the next day. So many businesses are like that. They have these disengaged workers around that just had no purpose to align them, and that's a big issue for this young generation that's emerging through. And if you look at most companies worry about what they say internally, their internal marketing communications, and even what they put out to the world. Not many of them have decent products to back it up. Very few have a very clearly defined culture and purpose, but you need that. Businesses like the one I explained to you that my colleague left, that one 20 years ago would do really well. Give people promotions, is seen as being ambitious. Nowadays, those businesses aren't working. Think about companies you might know that have that old school mentality. It's all about superficial drivers. It's the ones that have deep purpose. They're the ones that are going to attract the talent of the future. It's really important. There are loads of businesses still that don't have that. So we sort of have this very clear burning platform that we're on. The burning platform is, on one hand, we have this increasing meaning and purpose-driven employee base that's coming into the workforce over the next 10, 20 years. All their needs for security have been satisfied. They're looking for meaning and purpose. But on the other hand, the businesses coming in are not geared up for that. They're thinking more about profit. A lot of them aren't privately owned. They're not geared up to create that environment that's going to suit them. Now, Jane McGonigal, who is a game designer and a proponent of the engagement economy, she said something. She said, "Decisions about where to work, what to buy, which brands to be loyal to will be based on how well an organization, experience or product fulfills on this urgent desire to engage wholeheartedly with meaningful challenges." The companies that can engage their people wholeheartedly with meaningful challenges will be the ones that will survive. And the forces of natural selection will change things over time. In a sense, this will take care of itself. Over time, it will gradually change. The businesses will become more like that because there have to be. The ones that aren't or that won't do that will have people that keep churning and leaving. There's some great examples emerging. I don't know whether you've heard of Uber, taxi service. It's a fantastic product, a fantastic business. Have an app, push the button, see your taxis on a map. You go, yes, taxi is 2 minutes away, comes to you. Your credit cards are already in there. You go, jump out, easy. The whole thing is fantastic because it operates a bit like a game. The drivers that pick you up, they talk so enthusiastically about it because they want to get as many customers as they can each week, and they want to get their average score up. They get scored out of 5. If they get the high score of the week, they get prizes, and if they get very high, they get bonuses. The whole thing's a game, and it's played on a week-by-week basis. They're drivers, but they're game players. It's a phenomenal, successful business. Within just over 3 years, it's in 100 cities across 45 countries, and it's been valued at $3 billion. That, for me, is a great example of the power of game thinking being applied to solve that issue we need about meaning and purpose. It shouldn't be that complicated because we know how important games are. 7 billion hours are spent in this kind of mind state, this game mind state, every single week. And people aren't just playing the games now, they're watching the games. Twitch, which was bought by Amazon for $1 billion, has 55 million unique users watching people play games. It's called esports. It's like a new kind of like, event to go and watch major game players. So if we want to sort of get under the skin of games, it's worth looking at some research. There was a study carried out between 2003 and 2009. There was a massive study about games, about the psychological driver of games, really trying to understand them. They said that people loved the hard work of games. They loved the hard work of games. And the researcher that was on top of the whole project, after all those years of research, he summarized it like this. He said, massively multiplayer online games, MMOGs, are actually massively multiplayer work environments disguised as games. And he said, they're the same thing. Fundamentally, it's the same psychological elements to them, the game and the work environment. It's just that work is a game that's so badly designed, you have to pay people to play it. And with that mindset, it makes you realize the power of applying game thinking to this environment. If we could apply it to this environment and reconfigure how you engage at work, think about what you could create. So what it means is a rethink, a reboot of how we think about a CEO. A CEO shouldn't just be someone who sits there and thinks about the profit and revenue and cutting costs here. And they need to think about the workflow and apply game mechanics to it. They need to think like a game designer. So if they're going to think like a game designer, what are the sort of the building blocks? What's the sort of the blueprint for game design? So I've read lots of the stuff about game design, and I'm saving you, 50 hours of reading. I'm going to tell you the 5 fundamental components to create a gamified environment. And if you get all 5 of these right, it will just take off, okay? The first one. So in a work environment, have rules that are very clearly understood and widely enforced. Most work environments, you don't really know. You do something, you think it's right, but no one really tells you. You do something and then someone says, oh, that wasn't quite right, you shouldn't be doing that. You're never quite clear exactly what the rules of the game are. It's ambiguous. So imagine an environment with super clear rules. Next thing, an environment where there's consistent and immediate feedback. So you do something, feedback. Do something, feedback. Do something, feedback. Most of our work environments, you do something, you don't get any feedback. So imagine clear rules, you do something, feedback all the time. So you're doing something, you get a real response. Now, as you're doing that, you're starting to see your reputation and your rank appearing. You're seeing how well you're doing versus how you did yesterday. How well you're doing compared to how well you did last week. How well you're doing versus other people. You start to see your action and response, and you're seeing how well you're doing. Now, add in record of achievement. So now you're doing that. All of a sudden, bang, something's happened. You've now gone up to a certain level, and so people have been told that you've now achieved a certain level. So you've now got that in play. Now this becomes an addictive environment. If you're in an environment where this is happening, your mind is sort of almost structured for this. This is sort of the perfect external environment to get absolute mind engagement. The 5th one, which separates the great games from the amazing games, and this is epic purpose. So you're playing this thing, immediate feedback, you're getting record of achievement, but the whole thing is leading to something which is so epic and amazing, and that's what you're all working towards. If you could achieve that in a work environment, work will become addictive. People would wake up in the morning and just want to get stuck into it straight away, all day. That's the possibility that this could provide for us if we start thinking about this in business. So in PhD, we actually started working on this about 3 years ago. We started building some of this thinking into how we work. We haven't done all of this, but we've got some elements of this now, and it's starting to look really, really interesting. To the point now where if I'm interviewing someone, I can say to them that if you join PhD, you're joining a global media agency, of course you are, but you're also joining a game. You're joining a massively multiplayer online game. When you first join, you get an email with instructions, you come in with your code, you log in and you play the game. And in the game, you can do pretty much everything you need to do each day. It's called Source, and when you log in, you'll see your home screen. This is my home screen, and I can see that on the right-hand side, I can see that I'm 31st out of 2,500 people in the game playing, ranked on pings. Pings are like points you get for doing good stuff in the system. I get pings for doing different things. If I use all the optimization, the mathematical suite at the back, I get pings for beating the algorithm and getting more reach. If I come up with ideas for people, they're my innovation pings. So the pings for different things, you can see here. You can see what percentage of my pings I've achieved for different things I do in the system. So I can see what my natural skills are. This is some chat functionality. I can click here to create a new campaign, but if I want to, I can go and collaborate with people. So right now, wherever they are around the world, the moment they're working, it automatically fires up on my home screen a challenge opportunity. So these people are working on campaigns right now. So if I go up to the top, Oscar in Sweden is working on a campaign for a channel idea. I can go and see his thinking. I need to see the information that I need to see. I can see the core idea, and I can click on video, TV, and say sponsorship to create a sponsorship idea that I know would be fantastic for this. And I can type in that idea here and submit that. So he's working, and he's now, just as he's working, he's had an idea coming from me. So it's called just-in-time collaboration. Now, as well as collaborating, I can obviously do anything I want in the system. So this is people using the system all the time for creating campaigns, doing research, creating target audiences. I mean, doing all you need to do in the channel planning process can be done within the game environment. And of course, when I'm in the game environment, I'm working on one of my campaigns, I'm trying to crack a core idea using the lateral thinking apps. Something appears in my inbox. I've got 2 suggestions. I can see a suggestion from Andrea, which I give a score to, and I can see a suggestion from Joshua. And so I might want to give him some feedback, and then afterwards I'll say it's either amazing, a like, or an okay, or remove it. And he'll then be told what score I've given him, and he'll get a certain level of pings depending on how good it is. So for amazing, you get 1,000 pings. Once I've cracked the core idea, I might come back and start looking at channels. You've seen this already. So I might see someone's come up with an online idea for me, how to use online for this particular campaign. So the crowdsourcing effects, the creativity is so rich, and it really works. Whereas brainstorms, I found brainstorms never really worked. This works. It really works, and it's brilliant. And it gives you 300, 400 ideas a day are put on Source from around the world. So that allows me to get the power of the global mind as I'm working. When I'm actually finished, I can go and have a look at my profile. In fact, I can look at anyone's profile. When I click on that, it will take me through to some of their details, so I can see how they get their score and from what activities, or which sorts of activities. This is really good as a recruitment tool. Getting people promoted based on those that have very high pings, or those that are innovators or thought leaders, because an innovator is a very different skill set to a thought leader. Innovators are very good lateral thinkers. Thought leaders are very good at distilling their thinking. Very different cognitive skills. But we can then move people around into new jobs. And people have been I recruited someone recently to be deputy head of planning in Australia off the back of their ping level. Also countries. So you can, in a minute, you'll click and you'll see that I can see how countries are doing. So countries are competing against each other. So at the moment, Colombia, which is an incredibly creative office of ours, it was third, and actually the last few weeks it overtook the UK. And everyone's competing for the 21st of December, at the end of the year when there's the cut-off. That's the period when everyone is aiming for. So incredibly competitive for countries and people. And the tool itself pulls you in. This is the desktop app. I can click on this thing to see the news. The next icon around is clicking on to see any awards. That one just clicked on is any notifications, anyone that's basically done anything on my campaigns. And this is any challenges that I can go and co-create on. So the Source game is happening in different environments to pull you in. When I walk around the offices of PhD, you'll see these huge Source Earths. And whenever there's activity, a collaboration, you'll see the line, that contrast, someone has just come up with an idea for someone across the world. And down the side here, the bottom ticker tape is when people are moving up positions. So it's making people famous. If an office or a person moves to a new level, it's promoted that way. The green, you'll see in a minute, the green lines are when people give feedback as well. So you can see when the feedback's happening. So this kind of game surrounds us, and it's encouraging and intensifying how we work. The engagement on Source has been unbelievable. 70% of the global company are actually in Source, 30% coming in every single week or more, and over about 300 to 400 ideas are being collaborated each day. Now, Source has really engaged the planners. The buyers within the company, not so much so, because they don't need to plan the campaigns. And the management of PhD don't necessarily need to think about it too much. But we've been working with Jane McGonigal to pull the whole company in. And that's what we're now working on. So there are many things that we're going to do. I'll give you a sneaky peek on a couple of them. We're going to create a social network within Source. So discovery sections, we can go in and you can see what's happening, and you can backslap people, and you can gift pings to them. Also, to start to do more things with the data. So, you know, having the different activities aligned to our values, so you can see how well you're scoring on the different values of PhD. And also, having these metrics, so dividing the amount of amazings you get versus how many collaborations is your potency score, and then what percentage of the system that you use is your expertise score. So this can be used as a fantastic way of assessing how well you're doing and how you can get ahead. We also want to bring the buyers in. The buyers are really an untapped creative department, what they know you can do in digital or, you know, analog channels. So making sure that we can pull them in, and we've got a way of doing that. So that's Source as it is at the moment. How well is it working? Well, we've just had our tracking study come back from PwC, and we've had some fantastic anecdotal evidence now about Source. You know, some great comments, quotes, pitches won, people that have joined that weren't going to join, etc. But quantitative is what I'm mostly interested in. Our engagement scores within this study don't really move very much. But since Source has launched, the movement between this study and the previous study is a 20% increase. Not 1, 2, 3, 4%, but 20%. It's unbelievable. And our creativity, the ideas that we're producing have shot up. I mean, like the amount of awards and great work we have, I've never seen anything like it, ever. This year at Cannes, we won 4 golds. And just so you know, that we won more golds than any other of the global media agencies in the world put together. And we are the 10th largest, or the 9th largest media agency. It's just a phenomenal, you know, overshooting on creativity versus our size. So it might be that Source and gamification is just a fad, and I have to accept that as a possibility. But I also have to accept the possibility that it might be something, a sign from the future, a sign of how we're going to work in the future. And if that's the case, it starts to become very interesting, because the opportunities are unbelievable. Start to imagine the world of tomorrow, what it could be. Because it could be, the world could be unrecognizable. The working world could be unrecognizable. Try to envision this, okay? Let's go out there and make a sort of a future perspective view. So imagine that it's 20 years from now, and you work for a large multinational game. A large multinational game. You come in each day, or to the offices, or the different offices around, you go to cafes, you work from home, but you effectively are in this virtual environment, playing this thing that's great fun, and it's working. The outward effect of what you're doing is having real actions. There's a game layer, if you like, that's been put on top of the business. And you're doing pretty well. But then you meet a friend of yours who tells you that he's just joined this new game, which is incredible, and everyone's been talking about it. So you apply, you fill in some information, and you have to go through a few levels of a game to see whether you're good enough to get there. It also has open source access to your current performance scores on the game you're currently playing. You can see live leaderboards. And you get accepted. And now you're in this new environment, and the game is so good, it's addictive. You wake up in the morning, and you're doing stuff on your different multiple devices, on your wearable tech, everything. And you're just engaging across the day. And you get very successful. You start to become famous within the company. In fact, the company itself starts to become very successful. And because it's so successful, everyone wants to join this game, and it's just this incredible environment to be in. And the working world from that perspective, when you look back on the working world of today, you would go, oh my God, it was so disorganized and unconsidered and suboptimal. It was a hellish way to spend 5 or 6 decades, to burn away all of my life, all of my youth, working 12-hour days in these dead environments that were either very stressful or very boring. Nowadays, work is an engaging, exciting competition of fun. That is the potentials in front of us. So, what does this all mean then? So we know that 90% of people in the working world are not engaged, costing $2 trillion a year. And we know that businesses are not geared up for this new generation of people that are seeking meaning, seeking purpose. Businesses aren't geared up for it. And therefore, those businesses won't survive. The ones that have meaning will keep their people, will drive forward. Those environments are the ones that we need to focus on and build. And the way to build them is to think about how we can embed game mechanics, because game mechanics is the royal road to engagement. It's a way the mind works that completely immerses you in the experience. And those game mechanics, the blueprint, those 5 rules, can allow us to do that in businesses, in our businesses and our clients' businesses. And if we do that, and we employ these game mechanics and start thinking like a designer, a game designer as opposed to a CEO, it will lead to engagement beyond anything we've had before. But more than that, it could change the nature of what it actually means to work for a living. And I think that is the ultimate objective. Thank you very much.